So this is 35 years ago. We were just cleaning up. The job was done. We had finished and putting away our tools, and I was winding up the cable on the winch. So I was just guiding the cable, my hand quite close to the winch, and my glove got caught on one of those little frayed wires and got pulled into the winch. And it felt as if someone put their foot on my chest and pushed me backwards. And all of a sudden, I'm lying on the ground, and my arm has been pulled right off, and it's still on the machine.
That worker survived, but he lost his arm. He was young and had his life ahead of him. A century ago is when the concept of workers' compensation was formed, based on reforms put forward by Sir William Meredith, who was Chief Justice at the time. The basic idea was this: injured workers would receive compensation and support, and in turn, the employers who paid for that support would be protected from lawsuits. It was known as the Historic Compromise. The Workplace Safety and Insurance Board isn't paid for by taxpayers. It's funded by employers and managed by the government to ensure fairness. 100 years ago, Ontario was the first in the world to do this. We were the leaders, and everyone was better off. And a devastating injury no longer meant destitution, as long as your workplace was covered. Meet Steve.
I didn't know really anything about workers' compensation at the time. I had no savings in the bank, really. I lived like most people, paycheck to paycheck, and I would have been hard pressed. Did some research, found out what I had to do, filed the right paperwork, and we started receiving wage replacement benefits. And that was so important because I didn't have to worry about putting food on the table. They covered all the medical expenses, and when it was time for building a prosthetic arm for me, they looked after all that.
I think it's made a number of differences. First of all, the compensation in combination with his ability to live fairly simply, and his rural life, which allows you to live perhaps less expensively than, say, an urban life, has meant a lot for us. And one main example of that would be, he's able to give significant help when myself and my brothers were going through school. And I think without the compensation, that would have been incredibly difficult.
It's a system that gave a man the ability to work, to have a family, and to contribute to society. It gave him a life and a future, and it was seen as part and parcel of the cost of doing business. Good business. But despite the protection from lawsuits and the benefit to workers and families, employers complained that what they had to put in was too much. In the late 1970s, an experience rating system was introduced. Employers get rewarded with rebates for reporting low or no accidents, but have surcharges when more accidents are reported. The WSIB has paid billions of dollars in rebates to employers who report low claims, but there's strong evidence some injuries are not reported. Financial pressures on the system have also increased. From 1996 to 2010, employer contribution rates were reduced in a series of cuts. This leaves injured workers caught in a culture that's focused on managing costs by reducing benefits. That is, if a worker is covered at all. Hugh McKenzie is an economist who has spent most of the last decade studying the WSIB.
We've had a large and growing proportion of Ontario's workforce that isn't covered, to the point now where Ontario has the lowest coverage rate in Canada. About 72% of workers in Ontario are covered, and this compares with well over 90 in BC and nearly 90 in Alberta, for example.
Miriam Nazimi got up every day and went to work at a private school. She was repeatedly asked to lift items that were far too heavy for her.
My job as an ECE teacher, early childhood educator, was lifting a lot of kids and moving a lot of equipment, moving a lot of heavy shelves. Each shelf at least was as heavy as 80 pounds. And then do it every Friday and do it back, put them back every Monday. I kept telling this is not gonna continue, it's harming me. I had an emergency spinal cord surgery. They had to take the disc out in order to bring back the spine, the cord, where it should be because it was pulled away. When I wasn't able to work after 6 months, when my EI got cut, I had no other income. Call me stupid. Call me anything you want. I did not know. Then I went to my family doctor and I said, what's going on? This is being getting cut and they're telling me go borrow money. What does that mean? I lost my home. I have no money in my pocket. I have no food in my fridge. What does that mean I go borrow money? That's what the EI agent is telling me. He said, let us apply for WSIB. That was the first time I heard about WSIB.
It was hard. You know, you want your mom to be there for you. And you want to go talk to her about things. And you couldn't, because she wasn't able to. Not like she wasn't there. Not like she, left. She just couldn't. And I understood that. So, it was just very difficult. It was a tough time. It'll be fine.
The nature of work has changed in Ontario since the beginning of the century. So has the nature of injuries. Now injuries happen most often in service sectors. And the most common injuries are sprains and strains. There are 1.8 million workers that need coverage, people just like Miriam. When those workers are injured, they have to depend on EI and OHIP for wage loss and medical costs. These costs should be borne by the employer, not the taxpayer. The solution is clear. All employers should be part of the workplace safety net. Costs should be shared more fairly to make workplaces healthier and safer. And claim suppression by employers must end.
I think that the opponents of universal coverage have to explain why it is that it makes sense that somebody can get decent coverage falling off a scaffold at a construction site, but if they fall down the stairs while they're going from floor to floor at the bank they work at, they're not covered. Somebody has to explain how that makes sense.
There has to be some sort of a safety net to help all workers in Ontario to be covered, to be safely looked after, to be able to go back to work and continue precious life.